Soil fertility was one of the big challenges to farmers in Africa because the areas of the forests were leached. They had a lot of rain and that washed the nutrients through. And then in other areas, the soil fertility would only last for a few years and it had to be restored. So soil fertility for gardening and for growing trees was really important. So caring for the soil in a food garden is probably the most important thing for successfully growing food at home. Africa has a heritage of ancient soil fertility practices like shifting agriculture, chitemene, in the forests, where fire and ash provided fertile soil in forest communities. And then the Ziwa of Inyanga were amongst the earliest to use compost and manure from their cattle kraals on their terraced fields, along with the Bokoni in Mpumalanga. More recently, the Machubani agricultural practices of the Sotho did the same, and the Xhosa had ways of transplanting forest plants so that these would survive future drought conditions. So there's a tremendous amount to be learned about soil fertility from African traditions of farming. Ukutata Mhlaba Lomti, forest soil fertility, was one of the ones that Sol Shava explored with the Izinyanga amongst the Xhosa. And they had a very good knowledge of forest life and the way that composting happened in a forest. So what they would always do is take the forest plants and the leaves and the humus and wrap the roots of a plant that they were moving from the forest. They would then be sure that the plant would survive. And here the explanation is, if you look very carefully at rich forest soil, you'll see little thin sort of filaments of mycorrhizal, which is a soil fungus, which was really important for plant root growth. And in the Makana area, this was very important because they wanted to restore all of the indigenous forests in the area. So the nursery grew many different forest plants to plant out in the city, but they soon discovered that when the first drought came, the plants weren't so successful. And the problem was that they were sterilizing the soil so that the mycorrhizal that you can see under a microscope was not there, and therefore it didn't support the root growth so that the plants would survive the drought conditions. Now, the question that we'll all be asking ourselves is, can we restore habitats and grow more food together, working from traditions and understanding the science better? Well, here's the perfect example of using mycorrhizal to inoculate the roots of a plant so that you can plant trees and restore habitats just by doing this yourself on a small scale, or maybe doing it in your class. And of course, you can also grow fruit trees. So the mycorrhizal tend to be useful for quite a lot of plants, but not most of the vegetables that grow in our gardens. So their good composting is important. And the soil funguses will break down the organic matter so that it'll hold moisture to support the plant growth. So there are many activities that you can explore in relation to soil fertility so that your learning can be applied in the gardening that you do at home.